Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. That's Danny Cannell checking in from the Fort Lauderdale studios, CBS Sports HQ, CBSSports.com. Lots to get to today. We've got we still have, we promised that we would be ranking our top available players in the transfer portal. We didn't get to that as we had to do an emergency podcast within a podcast during our Wednesday live show. Go check out our thoughts on Jeff Brom to Louisville there. News broke yesterday, probably going to be made official today. And then we will start to see what happens on the Purdue front as they look to replace their head coach. But it's nice that we got another day because we now get to rank these players in the transfer portal with a couple of names that are not going to be in the transfer portal as some of the more significant moves that we saw in terms of personnel that include some announcements about players that are coming back. We've also got some assistant coaching carousel news that's very significant, including Deion Sanders reportedly headed to Tuscaloosa to go and get an assistant coach, building out that staff for the Buffs. But we begin with two stories, and this is the order that they happen, because first there is the news that North Carolina offensive coordinator Phil Longo is going to be headed to Wisconsin to join Luke Fickell's staff. There is, according to Bruce Feldman and others, a relationship between Longo and Fickell that includes Longo interviewing for the offensive coordinator job at Cincinnati when Fickell was there. The news of Longo leaving raised a lot of eyebrows because of what that might mean for Drake Maye. Because if this offensive coordinator, who has been, calling there with Maye for 2 years and obviously coaching him on the field to a very prolific season in 2022, if he's gone, and if 9-10 other North Carolina players have all entered the transfer portal as well, is everybody bailing ship right now? Then story number 2, which we'll get to first, Drake Maye takes to Twitter to announce, with the cool lighting, nice little effects put on the photo, that he is going to remain a North Carolina Tar Heel. Huge significance for North Carolina, without a doubt. Drake Maye enters the season as one of the top quarterbacks in the sport in 2023. Huge impact on the transfer portal, as now those schools that are looking for quarterbacks, if you thought that Maye was going to be available, now you take him off the board, now you start to look other places. Before we get to the Longo side of this, because Wisconsin fans, buckle up. Life's about to be real different than what you've gotten used to in terms of Wisconsin Badgers offensive football. What do we make about Drake Maye's announcement that he's going to be back at North Carolina next season?
Woo! Let's go. Come on.
Good day for the ACC. ACC boys get to celebrate. Jeff Brom is going to Louisville. Louisville was able to get him out of Purdue, and Drake Maye is not going to Alabama or Ohio State. Like that, star power has been solidified in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Broke conference, yes, but at least they got star power.
Big news. There are 2 reasons why I'm on the show today. Because I got so much going on. I'm traveling to Philly for Army Navy. I had a bunch of contracts, trying to get stuff done at the house. But there were 2 reasons I wanted to come on. One, I thought about those raps that we got from all our listeners where they're putting up 8,000-9,000 minutes on Cover 3. I was like, I can't just take a day off. I got to prioritize being here for the people. And number 2 was Drake Maye coming back, because this is massive news for Carolina fans. And I know they're dealing with some losses here too with the coach, but think about what this will do for recruiting. Think about what this will do for other players that might be considering a similar decision later. Hey, you can stay. You can stay. I have a take on this, because I know Mac put it out there early before the portal opened that 20 teams had reached out. I think this is one of those things that it's untouchable. If people still come after Drake Maye, I almost hope I wish Carolina or somebody would put him on blast. Because I think they're still going to come. They're still probably going to come with offers. I mean, Jordan Addison was secured to Pitt, supposedly, and they had deals lined up, and they thought it was enough. and then he ends up bouncing. I don't think you see the similar thing happen with Drake Maye, but it's one thing to tamper when they're up in the air, and they're kind of now that he's said, no, I'm coming back, leave him alone. Leave him alone. Don't take our prized possession.
It's obviously huge for Carolina, as Danny just said. It's also pretty huge for the sport, right? If he had gone, let's focus in on the three teams that we think would have the money and the need and the prestige and the roster around him to actually maybe entice him to go. Not that they were reaching out, but just the obvious candidates if he was going to go somewhere. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. Mm-hmm. All three are losing their quarterbacks after this year. All three have pretty loaded rosters, even if Bama does need to retool its receiver room. If he goes to any of those teams, they're instantly the title favorite for next year. I think we can all agree, right? I mean, just you put Drake Maye on one of those squads, that means the other two squads do not have him. So it does really impact the balance of the sport. I was talking to a director of player personnel yesterday, and we were chatting. He's like, yeah, I think most of these good quarterbacks are going to get like $1 million for their final year. Like, you got to give them enough to entice them not to go try to be a 6th or 7th round pick where the signing bonus is like $75K to maybe $200K, right? And, there's a lot of these quarterbacks that are worth more to their schools for the final year than they are to an NFL team as a 6th or 7th rounder in theory, because the money's not guaranteed in the NFL unless you make the roster, right? It's only the signing bonus is. So, from that perspective, but he said, with Drake Maye, I could see a team paying him like $7 million, and I wouldn't like fault them for doing that. I don't think he'd actually get that, but that's probably about the highest I could see them go for 1 year, because there's just the only risk is injury. There's no bust risk really, because the guy can already play, right? And like unlike giving, let's say, $11 million to the number 2 rated high school quarterback out there over 4 years, that has injury risk, but it doesn't have bust risk. That's why you see in baseball, like Verlander just got $86 million over 2 years. The only downside really is injury with him. The dude is proven. But I think it's just huge for the sport because it doesn't upset the balance of power within the sport, because Drake Maye is staying, at least right now.
I think it's good for North Carolina. I think it's good for Drake Maye. It's good for the ACC. So congratulations to the three of you. You get something to cling to next year as the ACC fails to reach the college football playoff yet again.
That's a bold, way too early take.
Where's the next take? Come on, where's the make?
I'll give you guys some meat. If the ACC has a playoff team next year, it's going to be Florida State.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll be Clemson. Yeah,
you don't think Clemson with you don't think that going into next year, Jordan Travis proven, Drake Maye proven, Cade Klubnik not proven, but potential is there. Who's the best? Who goes into next season as the QB1 in the Atlantic Coast Conference?
I think it's got to be Jordan Travis.
Wait, if Drake Maye was not there, you mean?
No, right now,
it's Drake Maye.
Oh, it's Drake Maye.
Yeah, no.
So let me ask you guys something.
I love Jordan Travis, but it's Drake Maye.
Me too. I love both of them, like sons. So,
are you paying them? Or are you donating to their NIL right now?
No. Here's my only, I think you've seen Jordan Travis on a trajectory that is straight up, and it's been going that way, and it's been, I think he started off low and he silenced a lot of critics along the way, where I'm starting to see, all right, man, maybe he could carve a Jalen Hurts type of career in the NFL. Like, that's where I am with him, which is awesome. Are you guys concerned at all? And now you're listed as the biggest Drake Maye fan there was in the country. The last 3 games were not pretty. They downright ugly. I think it was 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, and you saw a lot of more mistakes. You saw him get hit more, and guess what else? You saw better competition. Last year at this time, we saw Tyler Van Dyke have a season. This guy looked like a surefire number 1 overall pick. He looked like all ACC. Man, he could challenge. And Miami's going to win 9-10 games. Then what happens? Rhett Lashley, his offensive coordinator, the guy that he had a lot of success with, takes another job. He has a new system, a new coordinator, and Josh Gaddis. Things fall apart rapidly. And all of a sudden, where is Tyler Van Dyke? Is he, I don't think you'll see that type of drop off, but new system, new coordinator. I don't know. Maybe new system. Maybe they try to keep some continuity in the system, but I that's why I would give Jordan Travis the edge. More stability in the program. You saw a team that has talent matched up against everybody else. They got to address that offensive line. They got to address the defense. It puts a lot of pressure on them. So I would say I would give the slight edge to Jordan Travis and put Drake Maye right behind him. Now, if you're talking NFL potential from what we've seen on one, I think Drake Maye clearly has the higher upside.
Yeah,
35 touchdowns to 7 interceptions on the season is still, because you're right. Like 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions coming down the stretch, playing poorly against NC State's defense, playing poorly against Clemson's defense makes, being able to shred Virginia Tech and Pitt and Virginia makes it look a little bit less, competition should matter here. But
Jordan Travis also didn't play well against NC State's defense and also didn't play well against Wake's defense. So like if you look at common opponents, I'm not really sure. Obviously, he was better against Clemson than Drake Maye was against Clemson. If they're on the open market right now, I'm very confident that Drake Maye gets double what Travis does if they both hit the portal today.
I think Danny's points are fair in that I don't think it's out of line to consider Jordan Travis ahead of Drake Maye, and I think it's very fair to question what the sophomore slump or the possibility of it will be going into next season with the new OC. That said, I think part of the difference, because I was the big Tyler Van Dyke guy last year, I think the biggest difference to me is that when Miami switched OCs, I feel like they went from something more quarterback friendly to less quarterback friendly with that coaching turnover. I don't think with Longo leaving, Mac Brown is going to replace him with a kind of a stodgier offense. I think they're probably going to go with a similar route and play that same style. So I don't know, but
they might not.
I don't know what they'll do.
There's a side of this where some of the defensive struggles, fair or not, are being laid at the feet of an offense and an offensive staff that they believe was not built to be able to give the defense a chance to be successful. And I would not be surprised if one route is to marry an offense that is going to not leave the defense as exposed, not create those super fast 3-and-outs, not be in a position where, like we saw North Carolina's offense at times, they'd hit the explosive plays, but the Tar Heels would turtle up and they would not be able to sustain drives, and they would send the defense right back on the field. And I'm curious to see, how they go with this, because I don't know if they're just going to copy and paste what Phil Longo was doing. And I think Drake Maye can be successful in pretty much any offense based on his skill.
I think Carolina's player development and defensive coaching is hot garbage. So I don't care who they have on offense. Like their defensive numbers will look better if they play slower, but they won't actually be more efficient probably. Like if you look on a down-to-down or drive-to-drive basis, they need to fix the defensive coaching there. Because last year we got rid of Jay Bateman. He wasn't a fit, right? Guess what happens? The secondary is still terribly coached. They don't play coverage very well. They don't communicate very well. Their player development doesn't look very good. I think they have defensive coaching problems on that side of the ball. And I agree with you. Longo is about Longo. Longo is going to try to score points. That's what he's getting paid to do. He's trying to move up in the world. He wants to score points. I get that argument, but like they still need to get the defensive coaching fixed at Chapel Hill.
From a complimentary football standpoint, I understand the idea that the offense wasn't doing the defense enough favors. I get that. But you're going to blame your offense for being the elite unit on your team for your defensive struggles when you hired a defensive coordinator the first time from an option team and then paired him with that offense.
I did not say it was fair. I just said that
whoever is making the argument is who I'm talking to. So you're going to say that hiring Jay Bateman from an option team and then pairing him with that offense and I don't know why this isn't working out. It's the offense's fault. And then you get rid of him and you replace him with a guy who spent the last few years sitting in a TV studio to run your defense. And you're going to blame the offense, which was the only thing that was keeping you in games, for your defense being the problem.
I think it's tempo-free ratings needs to be fixed.
I think it's friction among the coaching staff, not necessarily like fans laying blame. I think that there was just but
there was beef inside the defensive coaching staff last year. We heard that at AFCA. All the infighting they had.
This would be like me fighting with Bud because my picks are losing. Like it's Bud's fault. Bud's picking too many winners and it's making me look bad.
I mean, look, tempo free. So like let's toss out the argument that Longo goes too fast and that impacts the defense. Just on a per play basis, offense 10th, defense 105th in the country. Like, fix your own house before you start talking about the offense if you're Carolina's defensive staff.
Mhm.
And they just lost Grimes, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I was gonna say they are also among the top teams in the country in terms of number of players that have entered the transfer portal, and it is overwhelming on the defensive side of the ball. So they're starting over.
and Storm Duck's gone. I mean, like, I don't know
Storm
if
Duck's
how
gone
big of a
too,
loss you think that is, but
Well, that's so it is linebacker, a safety, defensive lineman, a cornerback, and a cornerback.
Mac's not lasting more than one more year there, right? Like, it'll be like he's gone or retirement if they don't win something with Drake May, because the recruiting's taking a drop now. Like, I think people are like, okay, he's not turning these recruits into actual on-field results. We're not going to buy into this anymore. I don't think it ends well there.
Oof.
I don't know. You know, Josh Downs is going to be a good NFL. Like, he's had some NFL talent and turned it in there.
I agree, but I'm saying, like, turn it into wins, really.
Oh, turn into wins.
Yep. All right. So now the Phil Longo side of this, because now Phil Longo is undoubtedly Phil Longo at Wisconsin, and also with Luke Fickell. I mean,
if there's friction with North Carolina's defensive staff, him and Luke Fickell will get along great.
It is a good sign, though, I think, that Fickell is not trying to run. He's not trying to be like defensive coordinator as head coach guy,
which he kind of did at Cincinnati.
I'm not sure it's the best move, though.
No, I agree. Like, maybe the hire isn't the best move, but I kind of like that rather than you could do what Justin Wilcox did at Cal and hire Musgrave, a guy who's going to run super slow tempo, really old concepts. It'll make your defensive numbers look good because you only have to defend 55 plays a game, but you won't have an offense that can help you in big games.
It's an interesting hire. It's going to be really interesting to watch because Wisconsin has built with what it is on a certain identity that they now seem to be moving away from. But the thing is with Longo's offense, like, it's an air raid principle wise as far as spreading things out, but they're perfectly happy running the ball. So I think that'll work. But my question is, like, you've seen it in the Big Ten, especially in the Big Ten West, for every single time it happens. We saw it when Rich Rod went to Michigan. They try to stop playing quote unquote Big Ten style football, and unless you have Ohio State talent, it usually doesn't work out very well, especially because the weather in Madison late in the year doesn't really go well with that kind of offense. It's hard to find the skill players in that area that fit in that kind of offense. So the recruiting is going to have to change. Their footprint's going to have to change. Maybe the transfer portal helps, the advent of the portal helps make this a lot easier to pull off. But, like, look what happened with Scott Frost in Nebraska. It's the same thing I've been talking about for years. Nebraska is trying to still be the team it was in the Big 12. You can't do that in the Big 10. And now I feel like Wisconsin's trying to go that route. Now, of course, Purdue just reached the Big 10 championship game being that program. But Purdue's always been about the quarterback and putting other guys around him, being a quarterback first. And I think that's why they're going to go that direction again when they make a new hire. So they've been like the outlier in that. I'm not saying it's not going to work. I will just say that when the announcement was made and it happened, it was really eyebrow raising for me because I do wonder if Wisconsin can succeed playing that style of offense. And especially how long will it take to transition, because none of the guys on that offense are built for that offense right now.
I seen a mean and disrespectful joke that made me laugh, that Phil Longo is going to walk into the wide receiver room and ask why it's only walk-ons. He's gonna look around and be like, all right, so where are the real wide receivers, the scholarship guys? Because I'm looking at these skill players right now, and I don't know how we're gonna run this offense with who we have. It was a mean and disrespectful joke, but it made me laugh. And Wisconsin's lack of elite pass catchers does kind of back up where the root of that joke came from.
He's also had really good quarterbacks at Carolina. Sam Howell and Drake May have been spectacular. Who the heck is playing? I mean, to your point, they got to bring somebody's got to bring with them. I did see, I think Jacoby Criswell, I'm assuming they had a good relationship. Maybe he brings him with him, familiarity with the system, highly rated QB coming out. That could work. I'm more worried about the weather, kind of what you guys are saying. There's a significant difference even between Columbus, where, yes, they have the 4- and 5-star talent, where in the month, I was just doing a little weatherman research. It's 20 degrees colder on average in the month of November in Madison than it is in Columbus.
Windier
it's
too.
average of 60 in November in Columbus, average of 40 in Madison. And if you really want to look at it, you're going to get some cold, blustery days. And by the way, that was a very unique circumstance in Northwestern. But look what happened to that offense when they couldn't throw it. And that's with all that talent, they couldn't get anything going offensively. So I think that is a unique situation that's going to be, they might come out guns blazing and just lighten up people in the month of September. And then when it gets cold, you better have some balance or else you could face some serious issues.
Also, like the pro team in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's only one game too. Like you mentioned what happened in Northwestern. What happened to Ohio State last year when it went to Ann Arbor and it was snowing and windy? The offense completely stalled out.
Yep.
That's fair. And I'm not saying Longo's a home run hire. I'm just saying like number one, I am encouraged that you have a defensive head coach who's not trying to win with only defense. Like Fickle's not trying to pull a Muschamp.
Oh yeah.
So that is somewhat encouraging. I'll also note that Wisconsin, their offense has been going down every year for the last 3, like significantly. They do not pound people anymore. They're not dominant or physical up front. They don't scare anybody when they block you. Like Braylon Allen's a good back, but they are not going from an effective offensive system to this. They're going from an ineffective offensive system. So like they could make improvements even if it's not the ideal hire.
I don't think it was the system. I think it was the offensive line and the just complete dedication to a quarterback who clearly wasn't working out.
That's fair.
We'll see if Graham Mertz ends up making anybody's top 5 available players in the portal a little bit later on in the show. Another name that is not going to be in the portal is the record-setting quarterback at UTSA. Frank Harris, who does have a year of eligibility left, is announced that he will be back for the Roadrunners next season after leading that team to a Conference USA championship. This is obviously huge for Jeff Traylor, a coach that we like and talk about a lot here on this show. It comes with a new NIL deal, which kind of shows as UTSA is making it splash in the American Athletic Conference that UTSA is very, very much trying to be a player in one of the conferences that we view as being competitive for the 6th best conference in college football, which, for next year doesn't mean as much as it does when the playoff expands, but a great sign for UTSA. Were we surprised that Frank Harris didn't want to test the open market or show up somewhere else and all of a sudden be a starting quarterback in a power conference?
I am, because I think he can play. Like, he is a stud. We've seen a lot of them when I go to New York on the weekends and do the CBS Sports. We've seen a lot of UTSA game, including the championship game, which might have been his best performance of his career. I think he could have easily got more money from a Power 5 school. His game, he can throw it. He can run it. He makes great decisions. His teammates love him. I think this is another one of those good for college football. I think this is one where if he made it as a business decision, he might have gone somewhere else. I know Jeff Traylor's got to be absolutely thrilled. And I was thinking about this because I think what you said, Chip, is important. The fact that they are, because he's won back-to-back conference champion, Conference USA titles. So like, what else is there to prove? Well, you're going to American, so you can win a different conference your first year there. So I think that entices him. I think he'll get more exposure. I don't know if he'll be in the Heisman conversation. Maybe he'll get more exposure for that conversation. I don't know if he has a realistic chance to win it, but he'll get more exposure. He'll get better airtime, and he'll get better competition. So if his end goal is to go to the NFL, I think it's a good move. Like, I love it. I think he's a great kid. Everything's great about him. So I'm excited for him. And maybe he's impacted too, because I don't know what you guys hear in the coaching circles, but Jeff Traylor decided to stay at UTSA last year, did a 10-year deal. And I know a lot of people have taken 10-year deals and bounced, but the fact that Jeff Traylor's there with him, maybe that was a lead that he took. Hey, my coach wants to do something special. We do too.
So JJ Perez, who does a really nice job covering UTSA for 24/7 Sports, he actually reported that coach had an offer on the table as well this year to go to a Power 5 school and was seeking more money for his assistants. I agree with Danny. I think this is awesome for the sport. I mean, the guy was 27-7 touchdown interception ratio. That team was beat to hell with injuries this year, and he really carried them to that conference title, went for 500 something on the ground, another 8 scores there with the legs. And it shows a community banding together to run this thing back one more time. Like the city of San Antonio and the business owners there and the fans of the team are investing in their product, and they don't want to go level up to the American, which is a much better league than CUSA. Like CUSA is pretty bad, honestly. Like they don't want to go to the American and get embarrassed. And a great way to not get embarrassed is hold on to your coach, who's clearly pretty good, and hold on to your quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. It's cool. Like just being able to get a guy to stay is good for the sport, I think. And with the NIL, you definitely have an option to, and maybe you get a hometown discount, right? Like I say, hey, if you guys can get me close to what I can get on the open market, can you get me 1.2, right? That sounds like a lot, but the drop off between Frank Harris and whoever the heck UTSA could get behind him is huge. So the drop off's a lot too.
I don't know. I don't want to even plant seeds, but like when I think of Frank Harris and a Hugh Freeze system, I'm like, man, Auburn should have backed up the truck, and maybe they did, but I think he would crush it in a system like that.
So instead of meep, you want the beep of the truck backing up.
That Hugh Freeze staff he's putting together, by the way, is kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys are taking a look at this, but it's I know there was some thought that like there's coaches all over the country calling and trying to get in on that staff. I'm not saying they weren't calling, but it looks like he's just putting the band back together. Bunch of Liberty guys, bunch of former Ole Miss guys. Not like an all-star go pluck it and spend a bunch of money type cast there.
UTSA, go ahead.
I was kind of hoping Frank Harris would consider reuniting with his former offensive coordinator.
Ooh. Somebody in the chat asked if something vulgar would happen if Tom Fornelli found out Devin Leary was going to Illinois live on camera. Maybe make it happen and we can find out. UTSA next in the American Athletic Conference has Rice, UAB, USF, and ECU as the home games. The road games are North Texas, Tulane, FAU, and Temple. Again, very much a work in progress as we wrap our heads around what it's going to look like in the American Athletic Conference with a new
just quickly. Some of the names we've mentioned on here, we're talking about quarterbacks and getting the bag and getting paid. Think about how volatile the quarterback market is. The conference of quarterbacks, Devin Leary, Sam Hartman, DJ Uyunglele, who kind of came limping into the season, was very doubtful. Tyler Van Dyke, it is no certainty that you're going to parlay your success from 1 year into multiple years of success or a top 5 pick. So, if anybody ever gets mad at players for transferring or mad at them for taking the money while they can get it, there's a ton of examples of guys that have all these expectations of potential, and for whatever reason, things start to fall apart, and it can go south in a hurry.
13 days away from the early signing period opening and what we call as our December National Signing Day. And one of the top players in the 2023 class in just a matter of hours, hopped on that phone, decommitted from Louisville, and just a little while later committed to Texas A&M. We are talking about 5-star Reuben Owens. He was the crown jewel of Scott Satterfield's class as that class was starting to come together. Bud, what's the big takeaway here with Reuben Owens? I think the decommit probably doesn't come as a shock at all. But as he hits the market, is Texas A&M a surprise landing spot for him?
Somewhat of a surprise, I guess, but Texas A&M is also an Adidas school. So, with the NIL thing, I think you kind of got it. We talked about this, would Dion land at an Under Armour school? Pretty sure Colorado's Nike, right? So it doesn't always work like that, but that one I would have anticipated it too. So Reuben Owens going to Texas A&M, not a huge shock, but definitely a great get for the Aggies. I mean, one of the top 2 backs in the country, depending on what service you look at. But it certainly shakes up the market a little bit. Jeff Brom's a guy who doesn't run the football a ton. And if you're Reuben Owens and you see Devin Achane, who yesterday or Monday announced, or maybe Tuesday, my days all kind of run together this time of year. I'm sure you guys do as well, especially since we don't have the traditional game week going on right now. With Devin Achane deciding he's going pro, you have a lot of playing time to offer there. Even in the Aggies' worst season, they still you still get a lot of touches if you're a back of a Reuben Owens caliber. And Jimbo, to his credit, we can crack on the offense. he has done a nice job when he gets 5-star backs. Like James Wilder probably should have played running back, but Dalvin Cook seemed to work out pretty well. He also had Devontae Freeman. Like Jimbo does a nice job with backs, so it's a good fit.
The one thing you can think of when you look at this Texas A&M offense, even as much as we rag on it, is, well, the running back position still works just fine, so it's still going to be attractive. You also wonder at the same time, like, he's committing on the same day that a whole bunch of like former 5- and 4-star recruits have been hitting the portal in the last couple of days. Who did the same thing a couple of years ago.
Yeah, what happens with that for Texas ATM? Like, they are bleeding out transfers as much as like almost anybody in the country. I haven't checked the latest numbers, but the likes of Arkansas, Alabama, Texas A&M, all near the top. Virginia Tech, even I mentioned North Carolina a little bit earlier, but the Texas A&M players that are hitting the portal all came with much higher profile recruiting status than some of these other players that we're seeing from Arkansas, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, certainly. So how that work in the NIL era? Do we have any insight into how this works with the collectives and with the bag? Like, is it secured? Are contracts broken? Are you now like available to go strike up a new NIL deal?
Well, Chip, a couple things here. Number one, I will say most of the guys that A&M lost so far are dudes they were fine losing. They are guys who weren't necessarily in the long-term plans due to maybe signing in the class prior to last class, who were going to get jumped on the depth chart, or due to they've already had to suspend, who were going like 100 mile an hour in a parking garage, for instance, right, and doing it on Instagram Live. Not always the best decision. Or guys with active felony charges, for drugs. Guys like that who probably were not going to make it there long term. A&M's actually doing a surprisingly good job of holding their class together from last year. As far as the NIL stuff, NIL cannot be an inducement to attend a school, of course. So it's
cannot officially wink, wink. Yeah.
If the kid transfers out, the collective is going to attempt to not pay it in most instances. Now, if the kid sues the collective and says, hey, you still owe me this money because the deal cannot be tied to attending a specific school, then the collective would have the option of defending that suit, right? Claiming the kid breached, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times you'll tie these deals to an in-person appearance on a certain day of the week, which is, unlikely you're able to fulfill that if you are a couple thousand miles away, right? You're not going to fly back to go show up at a bookstore and do a jersey signing every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. or whatever. However, there's some complications to this. Number one, PR-wise, reputationally, you don't really want to be the first collective out there
suing a player.
Yeah, because then you're going to get the reputation for not following through on your deal, not paying the player. So while I do think a lot of them will at least attempt to do it at first and make the kid kind of threaten it, on the other side of it, they need to just price that potential liability into their deals and into their budget, right? It's just it's the cost of doing business.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody think bags of cash just stop happening and it's all, and I'm not saying Texas A&M, I'm saying it a lot of places.
Yeah, if you've been used to
do you
dropping
think
off
Bagmen just went out of business? Like, I don't think they did. I think it still works probably better than any sort of, hey, you got to do this appearance. I think those are great. I think those exist for sure, like Bud is talking about. But I still think there are bags of cash that work just as well. And probably more so because you're a little bit more, like, maybe you could explain this away. Like, and is the NCAA even looking into this anymore? Like, because it's such a wild west, do they even care?
So
Emmett's on a retirement tour.
I think you want to do it, though, through a collective. It's just easier to claim it. If you give a kid a bag of cash, like that's $500,000, right? That's a big suitcase. You give that, it's going to end up on Instagram or TikTok or something, right?
But I got,
and you can't pay taxes on it.
NIL guy. Like you don't have to explain where it came from.
Can you pay taxes on it? Can you buy a house on it? Right? Like there are better ways to do this. Okay. In some states, some rural states, right? Maybe the family lives out in the country and you decide you want to purchase a very expensive hunting lease in their backyard. Right? Like we know that's been done. stuff like that. Cash still happens for sure. You still got to grease the high school coach to take the kid up on a visit, or to sometimes you gotta grease the kid to all of a sudden have some car trouble and not make the visit that's been discussed for a couple days in a row on a certain school, right? Like sometimes, like I'm considering taking a visit to this other school. Is, hey, I'm a little short on gas money here. I'd rather just sit home and play Xbox than go take a 7-hour trip. So if you make it worth my while, I'm not going to make that trip, right? Danny's not wrong. Like the bagman stuff still happens, I believe. But the really big numbers, I do think, get done through the collective process.
Am I the only one that's starting to think some of these numbers that get thrown around for NIL are no different than Bitcoin?
Ha!
I think there's a lot of websites that have NIL value that drive me insane, because I think they're now I'm also one that didn't think we would see some of the numbers we are, but I think there's way too much assuming, and I think this is one of the downsides for players, and I've talked to some coaches about this. These players, and I'm not talking about the Drake Mays and the top tier players, they go on there and they say, "Oh, I'm worth 30 grand. Let's go. Where's my 30 grand?" And they get out there and they're like, they realize quickly it is not a real number. So yes, Tom, it is 100% a lot like Bitcoin.
If you guys are a podcast listener and you don't watch us on YouTube, make sure you check out our YouTube Shorts section, because I actually shot something on this yesterday explaining how the demand curve is not represented correctly right now by these websites out there. The bottom 30 or roster is not worth more than their scholarship. Okay, so don't hit the portal if your NIL valuation on whatever of these junk websites that you want to go on says it's worth like 30K, because more than likely you're going to find 0K. They need to save it for the guys who are really worthwhile.
Yeah, I don't know how you would come up with a real calculation for all of these players in the portal.
That's what I'm saying. Is there like any like paperwork that like proves how much anybody's getting?
No, they it's their proprietary formulas that look at Instagram followers and
no, but I'm talking about for like actual deals. Like, is there actual paper trails?
Yeah, the players are supposed to report it to the school,
but does the school don't report it?
No, they don't.
Okay, so a kid could say I got 7 figures, and in reality he's getting maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, but like if you know guys who you've known in the industry for a long time who say like, hey, we offered this kid 1.5 a year and didn't come close. I do think like some of these high school kids are legitimately getting like $3 million a year to play quarterback.
What happens if the protection I'm curious about is what happens if you because I think there was a pretty high profile player last year who went to the West Coast, who at his previous school, they tried to set him up pretty nicely with an NIL, and then he left and got the bag on the West Coast at a place in Los Angeles. What happens? Because that NIL, then I think they have a legit beef. And like, I'd be pissed. I'd be trying to go after him too and get the money back if there was some taken.
How much is that trophy this theoretical quarterback will probably be taking home in a couple days worth? Can he like?
Oh, I'm not. I was actually.
Oh, I think you were talking about receiver.
A different one. I was talking Far East.
Oh,
I was thinking of a different ACC player.
Oh, okay.
Who won a very prestigious award last year.
Gotcha.
Not the one who's going to use all that NIL money for manicures.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
My bad. I misunderstood.
Yes, I should have said further east because there were quite a few.
Yeah, the May transfer of that wide receiver didn't come with the same sort of blowback as the January transfer of the quarterback,
right?
Who might be hoisting a trophy.
But even that one, they kind of acted like it was up in the air. Where's he going to go? I think that deal was sealed long before.
Well, there was the Wisconsin moment. I mean,
yeah,
for a second,
that was great smoke screen. That was great. I mean,
well, Bobby Ingram has a relationship.
Like think of the whirlwind, going off subject here. Think of the whirlwind Wisconsin fans have dealt with. There was last year where they thought for a minute they were getting Caleb Williams. Yesterday there was 2 hours where they thought they were getting Drake Maye.
I do think though, I don't think you are seeing non-quarterbacks get more than $1 million per year in the portal. Like if you wanted, like where do we throw the BS flag? Where do we draw the line? I would say there. I mean, maybe like a really top defensive end or something like that if you get in a bidding war, or if some G5 school had like a legit top 10 pick type player at left tackle who as a sophomore and he had 1 year left. I could see him getting like $1 million for his final year, but I really think it's quarterbacks only getting the 7 figures per year. Other than that, I have not heard that. I know Bruce Feldman yesterday said that a defensive player who didn't have very much production, I think he said he only had 4 sacks, got over $500,000 last year for 1 year. And it's pretty easy to figure out who that was. I mean, Nebraska won a pretty notable transfer portal thing late in the year. So
you don't think the Jordan Addison money's real?
I don't know how much per year. You know, that's a really interesting question. But he just won the Biletnikoff. He's projected as like a top 10 guy. What are we saying real? Like, what are we seeing for Addison?
I had heard last year like 3 was the number
per year.
Well, I mean,
I would be shocked about if
because he's going. It wouldn't be. It would be only for 1 year. Jordan Addison's going pro.
That's right. Yeah, I would be surprised about that. I really would.
And maybe it was a 2 year. Like, hey, if things maybe it was 1.5, like, who knows?
Maybe there were bonuses, like it depending on what you did. It was like an actual contract, you know.
Who knows?
Oh my goodness!
I'm just happy that there's no regulation.
Speaking of all the bag, what if we had a limitless NIL funds? What if we didn't care about the relationships between the players inside the meeting room? Who would we be going after for the top available players currently in the portal? Our top 5 available in the transfer portal, and more buzz from the assistant coaching carousel coming up next.
Meanwhile, on Paramount Mountain.
All right, let's do this roll call. It's freezing up here. Blase, where you at, Blase?
It's Blaze.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna be.
Blaze?
Y'all need to say your name right. B. Louie.
Do you mean Blue?
Okay. You want to go to war? You prefer not to go to war? Me too. Ridiculous. Hey, Ron.
Here, Coach.
Thank you. Where's Bumbly Bay at? Is Bumbly Bay up in here?
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. And yes, before we get out of here, our official Army Navy picks. As if you didn't already know which way we're going with this. Maybe we will have maybe Bud's going to be anti-American again. We'll see. Okay. But first, let's go ahead and let's do our top players available in the transfer portal. I got mine listed 1 through 5. Let's go ahead and let's hit. Let's all do our top 5, and then we can start to pick out some of the ones that stand out. Tom, what does your 1 through 5 look like?
My 1 through 5. Now, I didn't want to pick multiple quarterbacks, so I only picked 1. But at 1, my QB, I have Hudson Card from Texas. The person in the chat asked earlier if I would do something outrageous on the show if Devin Leary announced his commitment to Illinois as we were live. I would be very happy if Devin Leary committed to Illinois and played for the Illini next year. I'd be happier if Hudson Card did. After that, I've got Jaheim Bell, the tight end from South Carolina, who I think is a very, very interesting and unique talent that could be used in a lot of different ways in the right offense. And I feel like he would be used correctly in my offense. At corner, I like JQ Hardaway from Cincinnati. I just like him. Whenever I watched the Bearcats defense this year, I didn't think it was nearly as good as last year's unit was, but I thought Hardaway was a pretty good player. I think I think he can get better. Edge rusher, I think McCullough going from Dason. Is it Dason or Dasan?
It's Dasan, not Deshaun, is what I was told.
Okay, so I thought him going to Oklahoma from Indiana, I think is a good pickup for the Sooners. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be impactful. And then at number 5, the guy I saw playing for my G5 team. Chip, you remember when we adopted G5 teams?
Yeah.
A guy we saw from my G5 team that I still love and I still watch to this day. You know, I love Olu Oluwatimi. Here's another big impact transfer center. I think he's going to have a huge impact in a Power 5 program next year. Avery Jones from East Carolina.
Is he maybe going to Champaign?
I don't know. I'm just saying. I think he's going to have a major impact at a Power 5 program next year.
Tom has a keen eye for this offensive lineman from ECU, pulling one deep out of the cut for his number 5 spot. All right, so I had 2 from Tom's top 5. My number 1 is Fentrell Cypress II, from Virginia, phenomenal defensive player and somebody who is probably going to have the opportunity to go and start basically anywhere that he goes. Hudson Card is my top QB. I agree with you there. He is number 2 on my overall list. I went back over Hudson Card's performances, and there wasn't a lot of bad, and there also wasn't a lot of healthy. I kind of feel like if he is 100% healthy and able to get a fresh start somewhere, that Card could really be successful. For my number 3, I'm going with Ball State running back Carson Steele. Really, really productive player, but also somebody that I think is going to not necessarily jump in and dominate an offense, but somebody that is going to be a huge pickup in terms of building out a running back room. I've got McCullough as my number 4, and then Devin Leary as my number 5.
I got a couple similarities with you guys. So Cypress to me stands out as the player that I think even teams that don't necessarily need a corner, but like elite teams, will probably be going after. The volume of production was there. And so was like the PFF grade. He has the measurables. I think Fentrell Cypress is clearly one of the sort of no doubt top guys in the portal right now. Devin Leary, to me, is probably the best quarterback in the portal right now, although Card, to me, is kind of a clear 2. I'm curious about Schlee. Well, I think he's going to get more interest than people realize. Is Hartman in the portal yet?
No.
And neither is Michael Pratt, right? The Tulane kid.
Correct.
I do predict that if they hit the portal, they will.
By the way, that is Colin Schlee. You know, you've mentioned
the Kent State quarterback.
Yeah, you've mentioned Schlee a lot.
College Schlee is a household name. The Kent State.
I mean, on this podcast, we cover the whole sport. I think our diehard chat guys know who Schlee is.
Yeah, but our total listening audience exceeds the viewership of most Kent State football games.
Right. That is fair. So if Pratt and Hartman hit the board, I think they shoot up to the top. I think Pratt or Hartman will be the most desirable quarterbacks in the portal if they go. But we'll see if they do. Those are just names that are kind of floating around personnel offices right now. Not that they're reaching out, but that they grade everybody just in case they were to hit the portal. You gotta work ahead, right, boys? All right. Johnny Cornelius, offensive tackle, is an extremely tough spot to fill in the portal. He's at Rhode Island. 6'5", 315, reshaped his body. He looked good against Pitt, and that's a legitimate defensive line, especially early in the year before Pitt got all banged up. I think that's a game that helps people to be sold on him. He also faced and did okay against Jared Verse last year. So before Verse became a household name on the defensive side of the ball at FSU. That's 3 for me. Give me 4. Dante Cephas is a name. Guys, Georgia has no transfers on its roster right now, and they like Cephas enough to offer him. That says a lot about what they think about him as a receiver. 6'1". He's a burner. He has production. Notre Dame, Penn State, I think Washington, Oklahoma. Hey, all 3 of those teams faced him, right? So they kind of know what Cephas is. I would say he's one for sure. I'm trying to just give you some off the wall names here. Kyle Morlock's a dude. If you need an inline tight end, I think that's 6'7", 250. Played for Shorter University. That's a D2 school, but people who have seen him are pretty impressed. Is that 4 or 5? I think it's 4. I think Jaheim
4. But I mean, we continue to highlight who was on your board.
Jaheim Bell has to be looked at as one of the top guys, I think. Now, South Carolina struggled to get him the football in terms of receptions. They did. And it was very obvious if you follow social media that he and his fam were not real happy about his use. But then he played running back for the final 3 games and played it extremely well against Tennessee, Clemson, et cetera. He's clearly a good athlete. You got to find the right way to use him, keep him happy as far as production. But Bell, the South Carolina tight end / H-back type guy, is going to be in demand.
Did Spencer Sanders come anywhere close to cracking your consideration?
I have not heard a lot about Spencer Sanders. I wonder if he doesn't stick around until maybe the spring window, just to kind of be able to pick his spot.
Just wait for other dominoes to fall?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. How many of these transfers do you think are going to end up trying to land before? And by the way, for those who are not caught up on this. This transfer window is open until January 18th. This is basically going to run through right up against when most teams are going to be starting their winter conditioning. And, Bud has mentioned before, are these schools on the quarter system, the trimester system, semester system? What does it mean for being able to get into school? Even if you are in this window, you might not be able to get able to participate for spring practice. So the clock is running on all this stuff. How many of these guys do you expect to be able to land at a new location? Because I've also heard coaches say, if you're in the portal, you can still work out with us. You can still practice with us. You can still go through all the team activities, but I don't know how long you would want to be in the portal, but also hanging around the facility. That can't be the most pleasurable experience.
So what some of these guys are going to find out is that academics do matter a little bit because of what's called PTD, progress towards degree. And when you're accepting transfers, kids have to have a certain level of progress towards their degree. It's much easier to get a younger kid in or younger player in. I probably should stop calling them kids. I'll work on that, I guess. It's easier to get a younger player in because hypothetically he could make up more credit hours to get sort of back on track for progress towards degree. If, however, you're like a fifth-year senior and you're still like 4 or 5 classes short of a degree and you hit the portal as a non-grad transfer, you may find a hard time getting in a lot of places. You may need to take like a semester of online college. And I mean, honestly, if you're that short of a degree after 5 years, you may need to have somebody take those online classes for you. But your options are going to be greater as a graduate transfer in most cases, I think, because the school doesn't really care if you get your graduate degree. Like the NCAA they don't really care. Like, okay, cool. Like the guy failed to get his master's. It's 1 year. You guys let him into your graduate program. That's on him if he doesn't want to. They do somewhat care about progress towards the undergraduate degree. So if you see some of these guys that are hanging out in the portal for a long time and they're well-known players, and they're not, and it doesn't say grad transfer next to their name yet, put 2 and 2 together and figure out there may be something beyond just ability that's hampering their portal progress.
I will say, going back to the question about getting in, like, I think it's important for every player who can to transfer and get in for spring and all that stuff, just to get familiar with the playbook and all that kind of stuff. But I think for quarterbacks especially, I think if you asked any coach, they would rather have their new QB there for spring practice than wait until the summer for them to get there.
Good notes. We also have reporting that on the assistant coaching carousel front, that Deion Sanders, who of course remember got Sean Lewis, sitting head coach at Kent State, on board as an offensive coordinator. For his defensive coordinator, reports indicate that he will be tapping longtime Nick Saban assistant Charles Kelly, who is an associate assistant head coach of the defense for the Crimson Tide. Charles Kelly to be the defensive coordinator. But I don't know if you have a personal relationship with Charles Kelly, though you have certainly covered Kelly from his time at Florida State. Do you think this is a pretty good hire for the Buffs? Mike Zimmer, who had been an analyst at Jackson State with Deion Sanders, was initially sort of believed that he might be in the running. This goes a different direction, but still brings in a pretty notable name and one with plenty of experience.
Yeah, I think Charles Kelly can do a good job for them. Yeah, I think Kelly's a good coach. I thought he would have been considered for the Troy job when it opened last time because he's a native Alabama guy. I think he knows what he's doing. At FSU, he got a bit of a bad rap, in my opinion, because of sort of the cultural rot that Jimbo was allowing to happen there in 2015 to 2017, and that was the time when he was tabbed there as the defensive coordinator following the national championship years. So I think he can do a nice job there, and so much of this is going to depend on exactly what type of player, what type of like athlete Deion actually signs. We're hearing a lot of hype around it. So far, I haven't seen the actual names follow through. Now, he did get 2025 Winston Watkins to commit. That's Sammy Watkins' little cousin, but they're also from like the same neighborhood in Fort Myers, Florida, which is where I'm from, right? So, like,
are you committing to Colorado?
I may be committing to Colorado. Like, I could live in Boulder. That'd be good, right?
I mean, you're going to have to ask for more NIL money.
My name is
It's
Bud.
not cheap to live there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The NIL opportunities for Bud in Boulder are
Yeah.
tremendous.
Yes. But it'll just the quality of player you can get is going to matter there. I will note a couple things. We don't know what's going to happen NCAA wise with Arizona State. Dillingham could totally kill it there if it's a clean slate. If they get rocked, then that's going to be tougher. We saw Arizona lose Dorian Singer. He was the Pac-12's leading receiver this year. He hit the portal. So that probably indicates that maybe their NIL game with the Wildcats is not that great, I would guess. Typically, if you have really good NIL, you're going to keep players like that, especially because Jed Fish has an offense that already made you the leading receiver in the Pac-12. So we'll have to see how the other programs that they're recruiting, there's no more divisions. So,
right.
But within that kind of traditional way of thinking about it within the South, there are some questions at some other spots still.
Well, that reminds me. Can I bring up something I wanted to mention too? Wasn't in the rundown. Talking about Arizona State. I would just like to point out something that happened yesterday that drove me insane, or not even insane, but just kind of got me. I texted it to you guys in the group thread. Everybody's in Vegas this weekend. Emmert was talking, Brett Yormark was talking, George Kliavkov was talking, and Kliavkov was saying how Colorado hiring Dion will improve their television rights deal, and that's one of the reasons why they waited. Which, okay, but the other one was Yormark, who, in one sentence, said that the Big 12 is still open to expansion, and then mentioned how they would still love to be in all 4 time zones, which says I was still interested in going after these Pac-12 schools. And then 2 seconds later was talking about the Rose Bowl putting itself above the sport. So this guy's trying to raid another conference for his own conference and then criticizing something else for not thinking of the sport as a whole. And not a damn person there called him on it. And it just pisses me off. Anyways.
I mean, I'm a Pac-12 guy, one of Brett Yormark's bosses, and he has 12 of them in the Pac-12.
Big 12,
I don't want you, or excuse me, Big 12. I don't want him to care about the rest of the sport. I want him to care about what is best for my league. That's what we're paying you for.
But don't call out other people for doing it when you're doing the same damn thing. It's totally so hypocritical, and nobody calls them on it. And it drives me nuts because I'm not a journalist. I've never considered myself a journalist. I'm a guy who writes and talks about college football. But there are a lot of people there who are supposedly journalists who don't call them out because they're scared that he won't talk to them anymore if they do. And Kevin Warren does it, Kliavkov does it, Yormark does it, Sankey does it. They all do it, and they never get called out for it, which is why they keep doing it.
Jim Phillips doesn't do it. He just says we're really focused on our Olympic sports, and being third place out of 32 is okay.
I will note one thing before we do the Army-Navy stuff. When we talked to the Aggies, I have back-to-back meetings at 10 and 10:30, so I don't always see stuff that happens right before we get on the show. Chris Marshall jumping in. He does fit in that class of guys who have been suspended. He was suspended the last 5 games. That one hurts for sure. Like Chris Marshall is somebody who, if he can kind of get on the focus train here, he's a dude who has all SEC caliber talent. Like that one will hurt the Aggies because their receiver development has been very bad under Jimbo. And honestly, at FSU, it was terrible too. So having a guy who has that much ready-made talent not work out is a blow. I didn't realize he had jumped in before we did the show.
Keep your eyes on Marshall. Tom, update us. What is the latest count for service academies as it pertains to the total?
Oh, well, I should make this clear for all the other outlets that use this stat and never credit where they get it from. From 2005, the under in games between service academies is 43, 9, and 1. 43, 9, and 1. And Bud's going to tell you how it's going to be 43, 10, and 1 soon.
So, Tom, clearly, because we are men of principle.
Damn right. We love this country.
We love this country.
Unlike Bud, who hates it.
We are going to be taking the under 32.5.
Yes.
Do you have a play on the side?
Army.
I know. I've got some classic chip line value over here where when it was a pick 'em, I was like, I don't know. I like the way that Army finished the season. They were really competitive against a good Troy team, won 4 out of their last 6 games. Navy got them last year when Army was a heavy favorite. So you've got a little bit of a revenge factor. No Commander-in-Chief trophy on the line. Give me the Black Knights. Navy's riding high off that UCF win. Maybe that's why that's coming from. But at Pick'em, I was like Army. And then I start to see it Navy -1, Navy -1.5. Now it's Navy -2.5. So, I guess that I'll wait to see if we can get this out to a full 3, but I like Army on the money line here.
Do you know why Navy's getting all that money?
Why?
Or where it's coming from? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Offshore.
Oh,
Ah,
Thomas,
yeah.
that is well done, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Bud, what's your read on this game?
All right, I agree that Service Academy unders is a tremendous trend, and I think there's reason for it, as Tom typically says, which is that these teams know each other. They do play differently than you can typically model in these things, and you should manually adjust what you do here. However, I have seen this all over CBS all week, and all over ESPN, and all over ABC, and it does beg the question: at what number would you stop betting the under? Would you ever bet an over in a Service Academy game? What would the number have to be? Because I want to point out, when this trend started, these numbers were often 42, 44, 38.5, 39. In recent years, this game has gone over 32 quite a bit, right? So 2019, it went over. Let's see, 2016, it went over. 2015, it went over. 2013, it also went over. 2011, it went over. 2012, push. All right. And then I go to another string of Service Academy games here. 2021, it would have gone over. 2018, missed by a point. 2016 is an over. 2013 is an over. 2012 is an over. 2011 is an over. And then going to the final one here, we got a good number of overs as well. 2020, 2019, 2017. 2017 was a burner, by the way, between Navy Air Force, 48-45. Look, I think that this is just priced into the number a little bit too heavily. And I think the trend makes a lot of sense, but the number also has to make sense. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the over 32. It's not something I'm betting heavily, by the way.
Fight.
An un-American lock fight. Okay, so
Boo!
all right, go ahead.
That last comment in the chat, if they only knew. Anyway. Oh, man.
17-14 is a winner for Tom and Chip. 17-10 is a winner for Tom and Chip. There's a lot of ways that we can get to 31. It's going to be tough to get to 33.
Yeah, I could see like 20-14.
20. You asking for 4 whole touchdowns? You know what happens when you
We
get
get 4 touchdowns.
Oh my.
See, that's the thing you asked. What the total
one
would have
defensive
to be.
score gets us there. Probably.
You asked what the total would have to be for me to consider taking the over. 27.5. That's when I would start considering the over.
So we still have a pretty good gulf here. But like I thought you were going to say something like 30 or 29.5. Okay.
No, I will still take the under when it's at 27.5, but I'm saying that's when I would be like,
what about the side, Bud? Do you have a lean one way or the other?
I honestly, I've been kind of impressed with what Navy has done down the stretch. Defensively, I liked what they did against the Irish in the second half. I thought they played pretty well against UCF. Them getting their quarterbacks hurt doesn't really seem to impact them. It's like clones. So I'm kind of leaning Navy a little bit, but not enough to bet it.
We will, of course, be dialed in, and you can watch the Army-Navy game, America's game, on CBS. You can stream it on Paramount Plus. Kickoff is at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Watch CBS Sports HQ starting at 2:30. There are some handsome gentlemen that will be on that show, Mr. Tom Fornelli and myself, as we get you set for all the action in Army-Navy. CBS Sports HQ to watch the pregame show with us, and then flip it over to Paramount Plus so that you can watch the game itself or watch it on CBS. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
I would like to thank the troops. Bud doesn't.